Hi guys, this is Cezary Zieniuk from IBCCS TAX. We are at the moment in Dubai, in UAE, and we are recording this video to explain to you what are the corporate requirements in terms of reporting in UAE. So you'll find out when you have a company based here, what kind of reporting you should do in terms of taxation, VAT, substance, and also the legal and administrative reporting. We have decided to make this video in order to explain to all the viewers what are the requirements in terms of the corporate reporting, because there are plenty of misinformation on the internet. There are many corporate service providers, intermediaries and bloggers and influencers, especially on Instagram, that claim that when you have a company in UAE, you don't have to do any reporting. You don't have to make audited financial statements, you don't have to keep your records, and basically they explain to the rest of the world that UAE is an offshore jurisdiction where you don't need to face many compliance obligation. And this is not true. We are here to explain to owners of businesses what kind of reporting they have to face. And as I mentioned in the other videos, UAE is a great place for doing business. It's not bureaucratic, it has great infrastructure, but obviously you have to comply. If you don't comply, then there are hefty penalties for non-compliance. Since UAE has adopted the corporate tax recently, and since there is also VAT and plenty of other tax reporting obligations, we have decided to open an office in UAE in the early 2024. And we have done it because there are plenty of corporate service providers on the market. Almost anyone that you meet on the street will help you to open a company. However, there are almost no professional accounting firms and no tax advisory firms, not even mentioning international tax advisory firms on the market. So this is why we decided to cover this niche, and of course to assist all the market and the economy with our tax and accounting services. So there is a huge demand now for this kind of services because there are probably hundreds of thousands of registered companies that haven't been preparing the accounting records. They didn't do accounting, they didn't do any tax services, and they didn't book the invoices, they didn't analyze a bunch of things which are important for the tax compliance of the company. So we are here to assist you. You can come to our office, you can contact us anytime, and we are not a typical corporate service provider, as you know, as we mainly focus on international tax advice and at the moment as well on the local tax advice in UAE. So feel free to reach out to us in order to get your accounting and tax into a compliant way. Now let's describe the reporting requirements if you have a company or business in UAE. So let's start with the tax, which is the most interesting part for us. So as you know, recently UAE has introduced corporate taxation. So nowadays every company registered in UAE is required to be registered for corporate income tax. You cannot escape from this. And while it was possible a couple of years ago, from June last year, every company must be registered to CIT, and some of the companies might have to pay tax. And we have other videos related to taxation, so feel free to check our other videos. But coming back to the CIT return, at the moment every company has to be registered, as I mentioned. There is a penalty for non-compliance, which is 10,000 dirhams, which is approximately 2,500 euro, which is a lot, if you ask me, for just not registering to CIT. And obviously, since the company is registered for CIT, you have to submit corporate tax returns every year. And the deadline for this is once the financial period is finished, you have 9 months to submit the tax return. Another obligation is VAT. As we mentioned in the other videos, it doesn't affect most of the businesses because most of our clients and most of the companies registered within UAE are doing business internationally, and they have international clients, which means that they are not exposed to VAT. However, there is still an obligation to register to VAT if you exceed relevant thresholds of taxable activity. So if you have a turnover of at least 375,000 dirhams, you need to be registered to VAT. If you reach taxable turnover of 375,000 dirhams, one more time, you need to register yourself to VAT. And this is the mandatory registration. And obviously there is a penalty for non-compliance if you don't don't do that. If you want to voluntarily register for VAT, for example, because you're doing business locally, you want to claim the expenses, you want to maybe get the VAT refund, then once you reach the threshold of between 187,500 dirhams up to 375,000 dirhams, then you can register voluntarily, and if you won't get the refund of the VAT. It's an easy procedure, we have done it many times, and the UAE government is quite efficient in this, so once you properly submit the application for the refund can be also given. There is only one VAT rate, which is 5%, and it relates to doing business locally. So when you issue an invoice from UAE company to another UAE company or UAE physical person, or you do business locally, you must pay the VAT, but you can get it back. In regards to the reporting period, VAT returns are submitted quarterly for the companies not exceeding the turnover of 150 million dirhams per year, or monthly if the companies exceed the turnover of 150 million dirhams per year. And there are obviously penalties for non-compliance, so please make sure that your company is registered for VAT and make sure that you submit the relevant tax returns. And this is an obligation not only for the mainland LLCs, but this is an obligation for practically all the companies, including most of the free zone companies. Now let's go to another reporting requirement, which is keeping accounting records. It's a myth that offshore companies and free zone companies and any companies in UAE don't have to keep accounting records. This is not true, it's a lie. Don't believe bloggers on the internet, don't believe influencers who are saying that UAE you don't have to submit any documents and there is super secrecy. There is secrecy, there is confidentiality because the registers are not public. However, in case of every business, every company, you must keep the accounting records. You must keep agreements, invoices, resolution, bank statements, everything that relates to the business of your company. And the period for keeping the accounting records in UAE is 7 years. So make sure you don't destroy your documents and you keep them, and best if you give them to your accountant so they book everything properly. Another reporting requirement related to accounting, bookkeeping and doing accounting and preparing unaudited financial statements. So we have mentioned that all the companies have to maintain the books within UAE for the period of 7 years. It's also obligatory for most of the companies to actually do bookkeeping and accounting. Again, it's not true what many people say on the internet. If you have a company in the UAE, even offshore company, you have to do accounting, especially now when you have the corporate tax registration and the VAT compliance. So make sure you are doing this, or make sure you delegate this to the professional service firm. And if we discuss the periods for accounting and making the bookkeeping and submitting the financial statements, UAE follows the calendar year period, so in most of the cases it's from 1st of January till the 31st of December of the relevant year. Unless you have registered the company in the middle of the year, then of course the period is shorter. In certain cases you can elect your tax year to be with the specific dates, but by default it's a calendar year. Now let's go to the most important compliance requirement related to accounting, which is audit of financial statements. Again, it's a myth that UAE doesn't require financial statements to be audited. Yes, there are many cases where companies do not have to prepare audited financial statements, and there are many free zones and some types of businesses where it's not required. However, for many companies it's a requirement, so make sure you check with your accountant or with your corporate service provider if your company has to submit audited financial statements. Why? Because there are penalties for this and there is plenty of compliance obligations. And we are being asked which companies are required to prepare audited financial statements. So first of all, many regulated businesses. Second, many free zone companies. Some of the free zones are flexible, but there is plenty of free zones where it is required to have audited financial statements, even if you have an offshore company. So please make sure you check in which free zone you registered your company, and if you need advice related to in which free zone you want to register your company, which jurisdiction or emirate within UAE to choose in order to have less requirements, obviously feel free to reach out to us. We have mentioned that it's not always obligatory to submit audited financial statements. However, It depends on the type of businesses, on the free zone you registered your company, and on many other things. However, a general requirement is that if the company exceeds 50 million dirhams of turnover, it must prepare audited financial statements. Or if there is a qualifying free zone person, so a company registered in a free zone performing qualifying activities, they also must prepare audited financial statements. Another reason why you might have to prepare audited financial statements is, for example, if you're taking a loan in the bank. Some of the banks, they want to see the turnover, and in order to verify this, in addition to declarations by the director, they need stamp by the accountant or auditor of the company. So the banks might ask you to prepare audit of financial statements even if it's not obligatory. And also, when you will want to request a tax residency certificate of your company, it's very often required to prepare audited financial statements. So as you can see, even if there is no strict obligation to prepare audited financial statements, you might be forced to do it if you request certain services or if your company is performing certain business. These were the most important tax and accounting requirements in terms of reporting when you have a company within UAE. Now let's go to administrative, compliance or legal reporting requirements. Let's start with the UBO reporting. What is a UBO reporting? It's a reporting of ultimate beneficial owners of a UAE company. And as I mentioned in the previous videos, there is no public registry of shareholders or UBOs, so UAE maintains a great level of privacy, and this is also why there are plenty of billionaires doing business here through the UAE companies. However, you still have an obligation to report to an authority who is the UBO. And it's very simple, you just have to provide basic information of every shareholder or UBO that has at least 25% of shares in the business. In regards to the UBO reporting periods, you have to submit the UBO report after the company is registered, and also you have to submit the reports once there are any changes. So if you sell part of the shares of the company, if you have changes of UBO, please make sure you submit the relevant UBO declaration in order not to face the penalties. The government so far has been issuing the first warning about the registration or about the delay, and then depending on the free zone, depending on the type of the business, and depending on a bunch of other things, you might be facing penalties that are even up to 1 million dirhams in terms of non-compliance with the AML and UBO. So if you need assistance with submitting the UBO declarations or any declarations we have mentioned, feel free to reach out to us. Another important thing is the license renewal. As you know, most of the companies, whether it's a mainland LLC or a free zone company, require license to perform business in UAE. And you buy this license usually for 1 year. In some free zones, you can buy the license in advance for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, etc. And you can actually get a discount from the free zone. However, in general, you need to have a license. So that means you have to make sure you renew it every year. So please make sure you renew your licenses, otherwise you might face penalties, or otherwise you might not be able to do business. Besides UBO reporting and license renewal, you also have an obligation to submit ESR reporting, which is Economic Substance Requirement Reporting in UAE. It refers to most of the business registered in UAE, so please make sure your corporate service provider registered the company for ESR. In some cases, you might also be subject to other regulatory requirements. For example, if you have a financial institution or if you do certain regulated business, you must submit AML reports, so anti-money laundering reports. And obviously, having said that, you also need a compliance officer, but the key point here is that you must submit the declarations. So please make sure once you have a company in UAE that you know what are the accounting requirements, what are the obligations in terms of submissions of the financial statements, and what are the general admin and legal reporting requirements. Because as you can see from this video, there are actually plenty of both accounting, tax, legal and compliance reporting requirements within UAE. However, if you have a good accountant, good corporate service provider that is taking care of these small bureaucratic issues, then you don't have to worry about anything and you can just focus on doing your business. So to summarize this video, please check if your company complies with all the things that we have mentioned, and if you need any help, we are here to assist you. For more information about doing business in UAE, taxation, which company type to choose, relocation, immigration, feel free to contact us. We also have offices in Cyprus, Georgia, and Estonia, and in these 3 great countries we have also recorded a couple of videos about relocation and taxation, so feel free to check our videos if you want to get more information about these great jurisdictions.